Last weekend, I went to the supermarket and I ran into an old friend from the community in which I grew up and spent my entire childhood. So this is an older gentleman, but someone who is very well respected in that community, and we immediately recognized each other, and of course, a conversation started. So I proceeded to ask him the typical questions that you'd ask someone that you haven't seen for a very long time. How has life been going? How is the wife? How are the kids? So he proceeded to give me the typical answers. Life is going great, his wife is awesome, and the kids are doing well in school. So when it was his turn to actually ask me a question, he said that he's aware of the work that I've been doing with my small business. He's aware of the content I've been creating on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn, and he wanted to commend me on that. So I wasn't expecting him to actually be aware of the work that I've been doing, but I was pleasantly surprised. But then he proceeded to say something. He asked me what motivated me to actually start doing this, because growing up, he didn't see me as the type of person who would be doing something like this in the future. How did my life change so dramatically from what it was to what it is now? So I proceeded to give him 7 things that I actually did in my 20s that actually got my life on track. He was blown away, and he told me that he was going to share this story with the people at his church. So that was when I decided to actually create this in a video to share it as well, so more people can actually see where I'm coming from and what I did in my 20s to get my life on track. My life is not perfect, but this will definitely help a few people. And if it doesn't help a few of you guys, I'm sure it may help my son when he's old enough to watch this video and understand exactly what I'm saying. So if you want to know the 7 sacrifices that I made in my 20s in order to get my life on track to where it is now, make sure you watch this entire video. Before I share these 7 sacrifices with you, and in order to have them make sense to you, of course, I have to tell you exactly why I decided to make these 7 sacrifices. So in my 20s, I created a vision for myself. So I knew exactly the general direction in which I wanted my life to go. And I quickly found out that in order for me to get my life on track to start going in that general direction, I'd have to learn a whole lot. So I made these 7 sacrifices to allow me the freedom to work on myself so I could improve my skills and build my knowledge base. So those are the reasons why I made these 7 sacrifices. And let me tell you, if you actually want to excel, if you want to dominate a certain area, you have to learn a whole lot. There's a lot of knowledge in every single area that you'll have to learn to master that area. So if you want to master an area, you may have to make some of these sacrifices as well. One of the first major sacrifices that I made in my 20s that I really think helped me to get my life on track, because it saved me quite a lot of time that I could then use to work on myself, to improve my skills and to build my knowledge base, is one that will surprise you and has surprised many people when I tell them. And that is, I totally gave up partying. So when I just started college, I would attend quite a few parties with my flatmates. But when I reached my early 20s, I totally stopped going to parties. And I'm sure some of my flatmates and my friends couldn't quite understand because I've never really explained to them. But I found that party going was really taking up a lot of my time that I actually needed to invest in bettering myself, in developing my skills, in reading books, and in increasing my knowledge base. So that was one of the first major sacrifices I made. And chances are, if you are really passionate about something and if you really want to dominate and learn as much as you possibly can in the field that you love, you may have to think about the number of parties that you attend. So I'm not saying that you cannot party, but partying every weekend is really a time waster. So that is something that you may want to look into. So I totally sacrificed going to parties in my 20s on my mission of actually bettering myself. The second major sacrifice that I made in my 20s as well is one that will surprise you and surprise a lot of people whenever I share it with them as well. And that is, for my entire 20s, I didn't watch a single series. So prior to my 20s, just as with any university student, I loved watching series. I loved to watch Spartacus and I really loved Suits at the time. But in my 20s, I totally gave up watching series. The only time I would probably sit and watch a part of a series was if my girlfriend girlfriend was watching a series because she really loves watching series. But I totally gave up watching a series, and I really limited the number of movies that I saw as well. So that really saved me a lot of time that I invested into reading books and reading articles and watching videos that would educate me as opposed to entertain me. So that was the second major sacrifice that I made in my 20s, and something that you should be looking at as well. The third sacrifice that I made in my 20s was that I practiced deliberately every single day. And let me explain exactly why this was a sacrifice for me. So, as you know, in my 20s, I would much rather be doing something besides practicing deliberately. I loved soccer, so I would much rather be playing soccer or to do something fun than practice deliberately. But whenever I found myself with some free time, I would take that free time and I would go in front of a mirror and I would practice speaking, because I knew that that was an area that I needed to improve in. I would also practice my writing because I knew I was weak on writing as well. So I took all of my free time that I would use to do something that I loved, such as playing soccer, and I would use that for deliberate practice. So that was a major sacrifice for me as well. The fourth thing I did, which I also consider to be a major sacrifice I made in my 20s, was that I dedicated myself to my job at the time. So I do know that learning doesn't just come from reading books or watching seminars, but it comes from what you can actually learn from doing a certain task. So I dedicated myself to my job, and I decided to make it into a learning experience, to learn every single thing I could about business from that, so I could use that to run my own business as well. So dedicating myself to my job, working extremely hard, was one of the sacrifices that I made in my 20s, which I know that quite a number of people in my age group didn't do at that time. They didn't dedicate themselves to their jobs, and that is what I did because I wanted to learn every single thing I could from that particular job. The fifth sacrifice that I want to talk about is one that I consider to be extremely important and quite possibly one of the most important sacrifices on this list. Yet it's one of those sacrifices that most people will not be willing to make. And that is taking most of your money and investing it back into yourself. So this is a sacrifice that I highly recommend that you take. And this is something that I did in my 20s. So instead of spending all of your money, all of your disposable income on cars, clothes, shoes, phones, whatever it is, take some of that money and invest in yourself. Attend seminars, take courses, do something to improve yourself, to increase your knowledge base, and to learn a new skill. And that is something that I did in my 20s. I sacrificed buying material things and investing that money into myself. This sixth sacrifice is probably going to get me into a lot of trouble. It's quite a controversial sacrifice that I made, but I had to make this sacrifice in my 20s, I think, because I had set myself some goals and I had a vision for my life. And in order for me to actually accomplish those goals, I had to make this sacrifice. And this sacrifice that I'm making reference to is that I focused so much on myself during that time that I totally neglected my girlfriend. So this, as I mentioned before, was a sacrifice I was actually aware of and I was willing to make because I knew exactly what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to focus as much time on my spouse as I needed to, and I really just hoped for her to understand exactly what I was doing at that time. But that was also a sacrifice that I made in my 20s by focusing on me and not really focusing 100% of my attention on my spouse. And lastly, but definitely not the least important of all the sacrifices that I made in my 20s in an attempt to try to get my life on track. And this is one that I'm not very proud of, but one that I also found to be necessary. And that was I gave up most of my hobbies and leisure activities and instead traded that time for learning and studying. So I really enjoyed playing soccer, as I mentioned before, and I enjoyed going on road trips. I enjoy going to the beach, but I didn't do much of that in my 20s because I used that time to read books, to attend seminars, to watch videos, to take different courses online, to try to develop my skills and improve and increase my knowledge base. So that was also a very hard sacrifice that I had to make in my 20s. Okay, so there you have it. Those were the 7 sacrifices that I had to make in my 20s in order to try to get my life on track for my 30s. And now that I'm in my 30s, I can actually say that I am seeing where these sacrifices that were made in my 20s are starting to pay dividends. I know that these sacrifices aren't easy to make, but depending on your situation and the plans that you have for yourself, they may just be necessary. So with that said, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you found a lot of value. And if you found value in this video and you liked the content, please go ahead and drop a like on this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And if you have a friend you think would benefit from this information, go right ahead, share this video with that friend. Finally, if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, I highly recommend you get subscribed because I'm always creating and uploading great quality content to help you to have a better life. I want to thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you in my next video.